So thank you for your patience, everyone. We've had an absolute avalanche of questions on cards, so thank you very much for taking the time to write them out. We probably won't get through all of them in the time that we've got. And we wanted to also give a chance first to those who would like to ask a question just by raising your hand. If you are happy to ask the question that you wrote down by raising your hand, then please feel welcome also to do so if you don't want it to get missed out, because we're going to have to juggle between the two. So we'd like to open the floor first to anyone who would like to ask a question.
When you do well in life materially, you can recognize that because you might have wealth, fame, name, whatever. But if you do well spiritually, how do you know? For example, if you have fever, you can measure the temperature, right? But if you're advancing, what are the symptoms? And how do you know?
Thank you. That is a very important question. Because in today's world, according to the nature of our mind and our false egos, we can give many interpretations of what it means to be making spiritual progress. And there are people who do cruel things and feel that it's a symptom of making spiritual progress. And therefore, a proper spiritual education is important, so we can evaluate what are the real symptoms. And in the scriptures of the world, we are given these symptoms. The primary scripture that I follow is Bhagavad Gita. And there are so many references in Bhagavad Gita that describe the symptoms of real spiritual progress. I discussed some of them this morning. Primary. When we have envy in our heart, when we have prejudice in our heart, when we have hate in our mind, when we have insatiable either physical desires for physical pleasures, or desire for power and prestige, or desire for more and more wealth, insatiable. All of these things are symptoms of a spiritual disconnection. One who sees with equal vision other living beings, one who sees through the lens of compassion. The Bhagavad Gita explains when we rise above these illusions, then we are not so much affected by either honor or dishonor, pleasure or pain, happiness or distress, victory or defeat, success or failure, because we're actually finding our satisfaction in God's love, in our being an instrument of God's love in whatever we do and wherever we go. The Gita tells an enlightened person sees gold and pebble with equal vision. What to speak of various kinds of people. Now, of course, in business, obviously, you're going to see golden pebbles with different vision. If you give your wife a pebble for her wedding anniversary, she probably won't be as happy as if you give gold, pebble ring. But it's not the gold or the pebble that's important. It's the affection. I often give example of my own mother. She used to tell me, it's not the thing that counts, it's the thought that counts. On her birthday, I would sometimes just give her a flower. And she was as happy with that flower as if it was a pure pearl necklace or a diamond ring. Because it's not the thing that gives pleasure to the heart. It's the love which is exchanged. If a man or a woman gives their beloved a diamond ring without love, then, the mind feels some value to that, but the heart feels nothing. So whether it's a pebble or gold, the real value isn't seeing it as the property of God and using it with love. And these are all symptoms of a spiritually advanced person. That are the fever of selfishness, the fever of arrogance, the fever of greed is being transformed. As greed transforms into generosity, as arrogance gets transformed into humility, as indifference is transformed into compassion, as we have a higher purpose than just our selfish cravings. These are all symptoms that are given by God and saints in the scriptures of what it really means to become spiritually advanced. Does that answer your question? And just as there's a destination, these qualities are part of the path to the destination. It's also a symptom of coming closer to the destination. And our spiritual practices, the people we associate with, the meditations, prayers, studies that we actually give quality time to doing, and the way we live. Living where we understand the most valuable gift we have is the opportunity to serve, to make a difference in people's lives with God's grace. Not taking credit, but giving credit to God's grace for all the good things that we do. These are the ways that we actually not develop these qualities, but actually awaken these qualities within ourselves. Because it's all inherent within us. Spiritual awakening means to come out of the darkness of our forgetfulness. When my guru, Srila Prabhupada, first came to London, he was asked a question. He was asked the same question in New York too. Why have you come here? We already have our own religion. We already have our own traditions. Why have you come? It was a challenging question. And Prabhupada's reply was, I have not come to convert you. I've come simply to remind you of what you have forgotten. And that's what saints do. They come to remind us of what we've forgotten.
Thank you. Do we have another question?
This lady.
Hi, Sharan. I wanted to ask, how can you stay positive in negative situations and mainly be motivated?
How to stay positive in negative situations. There are negative situations that are beyond numbers in this world today. It's important that we're connected to the positive. That's why our spiritual practice is important, to maintain that connection to the positive. And when we have that connection to the positive, then even in negative situations, we can be positive. It's just like these lights. The illumination is coming because there's a current. At our eco-village, we have all our lights. The current is solar energy, solar panels and everything. But whatever the source may be, it's the electricity is the source of the light. And if it's not connected, then the absence of light is darkness. So negativity is like darkness, and positivity is like light, yes, in this analogy. So in this room, it would be completely dark if there was no lights. If we want the lights, when there's dark, actually there's darkness all around until you put the lights on. But the lights are dependent on the connection to the current. And our spiritual practice and the blessings and grace of spiritually advanced people is really where we get our current. And then in whatever dark situations, we could actually be the source of light. In whatever negative situations, we could be the source of being positive. But if we really want to bring light where there's darkness, then we have to invest that time in keeping our current, that current of grace flowing through us. There's a beautiful analogy in the Sanskrit texts of a lotus flower. In Sanskrit, it's Padma. The lotus flower sometimes grows in the muddiest, most polluted ponds of water, but always remains completely pure, clean, and untouched. If you put any water on it, clean water, dirty water, any water on a lotus leaf, it just, have you ever seen it? It becomes like a ball. The water becomes like a ball on a lotus leaf and just rolls right off and doesn't leave the slightest trace that it's ever been there. So similarly, if our roots are well situated like that lotus flower in our own spiritual practice, in Krishna or God's grace, if we are rooted there, then even in the dirtiest places, like a lotus flower, we can give beauty, we could give fragrance, and we could remain clean. Does that answer your question? When Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world," that doesn't mean we wait till everything's really nice till we become nice. That means whatever it is, we connect to that divine grace that is within us, and we're nice to bring niceness. We don't wait till the darkness goes away till we connect to the light. We connect to the light to give light in darkness. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one great saint, he wrote, where there's the greatest necessity, there's the greatest opportunity to serve. Just like I just met a dear friend who's a doctor who's sitting just a few seats away from you. And a doctor, when he sees a disease, he doesn't hate the person for the disease. Even though it's a very negative thing, a disease, he sees a positive opportunity that here's a way that I could show my love. Here's a way I can help. So the more negativity there is, the more opportunity there is for us to actually make a difference in people's lives and in the world's. So we should be grateful for that. Is there any other question?
Hi, a similar sort of question, really. How do you help other people going through something emotional or something negative in a practical way?
The details are very much according to the time, the place, the people, the circumstance. But the general principle is to actually care about that person. That's important. And to be what you really want to give to that person, as far as we can. Through our words, through our example, through our concern, to really try to help. I was not long ago with a man who went through a tremendous trauma in his life. And about 20 years before, he was an alcoholic. And he really hit the bottom before going to Alcoholics Anonymous and became sober. So when this trauma came in his life, practically the whole group of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous people, knew 100% he's going to go back into alcoholism because of what he's gone through. We have to be there to help him. So when I met him, he was crying, telling me that these people were coming to him day and night just because they cared. They really wanted to be there for him in every possible way because they understood. Do unto others as you would want them to do to you. And that saved him. It was the outreach of caring people who were giving him the right thing that really helped him. So sometimes people aren't willing to accept our help. So we could use our good creative intelligence and our prayer to try to somehow or other reach them. But even if they don't, we can just by our example and our compassion, we can put a seed in their heart that may not apparently take effect to our vision now, but in due course of time it will. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
What advice would you give to parents raising teenagers in an increasingly materialistic society?
You need a really good connection. I was a teenager in the 1960s, and I know what I did to my parents. And that might be one of the reasons I'm a Swami today, because I know the philosophy of karma. But our love, our compassion, and our example are very important. We were speaking about the seeds, and I know so many teenagers who really go wild and crazy and rebel. But if their parents, their example, and the seeds they've put in their hearts by their love, care, and their wisdom and example, even if they rebel against it, it's there. And most of them that I have seen, as they go through that turbulent era of so much social pressure to be crazy in the name of being cool, they gradually see through it. And a lot of that is due to the example of their parents and the prayers of their parents. One of our very dear devotees, he's an American boy, and he was born in the Hare Krishna movement. And growing up in America as a teenager, he became quite wild. And after he grew up, he got married, he had children. He was at an event that we were having in Mumbai, in Pune. It's a town in Mumbai. And we had about 5,000 people there. 4 days of just having kirtan, chanting, and discussions like this, and lectures, and dramas, and feasts of nice spiritual food. It goes from early morning till late night every day for 4 days. And he was singing, and he really enchanted people's hearts. So at the very end of this festival, we were just thanking everybody who came. And we asked a few people to say some closing words. And he came to the stage. And we asked, would you like to give a message to these people? And he said, my message is never underestimate the prayers of a mother. And he told his life about how he was a teenager. And he was doing the things that parents don't want their teenage children to do. And he was going into very dangerous zones where, parents don't know if their children are ever going to come out of it. But he said his mother was praying for him. And he said, whatever good is in me today is because of the prayers of my mother. And he started to cry. He said, never underestimate the prayer of a mother. And I looked out at the audience, 5,000 people. That means 10,000 eyes were all crying. So our prayer, our example, trying in whatever creative and effective way we can to bring wisdom to their lives, trying to somehow or other connect them with other people that will bring wisdom to their lives. It can transform them now, or it can create seeds which may not come out of the ground for a while, but when they do, they create beautiful flowers. And we should have that faith. And do the best we can. There's that famous saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Yes? But it's really important to bring them to water. And even if they don't drink right now, it's a good chance that they're going to get thirsty. And they have something to drink. I hope that helps. Thank you.
So from my point of view, the question is, why does the mind never appreciate the moment or the past and just thinks about the future?
Sometimes the mind thinks about the past too. But the same saint I was speaking of, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote dozens of books that are read by millions and tens of millions of people. He wrote thousands of beautiful poems and songs, which are sung all over the world every day by devotees of the Lord. He was a devotee of Krishna. He had a wife named Bhagavati who was equal to him in her love for God and devotion and compassion. And he had 10 children. And he had several homes. And he also, his job was he was a magistrate. He was a judge during the British rule of India. And he was so expert. He was so compassionate. And he was so fair. And he had such wisdom that there are instances where even criminals, when he found them guilty and sentenced them, they would thank him because they understood, if you're sentencing me to this, it must be good for me. That was his connection. He was truly compassionate in whatever he did because he had such a deep spiritual connection. What was your question again?
The question was around mind thinking about the future.
Okay, so he wrote in one of his beautiful writings that the exact poetry, I'm not remembering at this moment, but the gist of it is we shouldn't be preoccupied too much with the past because it's gone. And we shouldn't be too preoccupied with the future because it hasn't happened. We should be in the present. But in order to really be in the present, we have to learn our lessons from the past, from our own life, from those around us, from human history. And we have to be thinking about what will be sowing the right seeds for the future, because the future is going to happen. The present moment is really mystical, because as soon as it happens, it's gone, right? Just think about what it means to be in the present. Time never stops. You can't keep the present. As soon as it exists, it's gone. So that means moment to moment to moment, to be where we are, who we are now, in such a way that we have the wisdom of the experience of what we've learned and what we've seen from the past, and we have hope, we have faith, we have compassion for what we can represent, what we can do for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the world, for the future. But there's nothing we could do about the past or the future except in the present. Yes? Our future is totally dependent on what we speak, what we think, and what we do now. Yes? So it's very important that we not procrastinate, which is a great weakness of human nature, is we put off what's really important and we occupy ourselves with things that are quite superficial and not very important at all in the larger context of reality. And even for people who are sincere and who want to be spiritually enlightened and who are on a spiritual path, this is one of the challenges, is moment after moment procrastination. Just wait, one more thing. But through that process, our whole life passes. Just seeking so many things that really mean nothing. I was recently at a medical conference in America, and one doctor, he's a very noted doctor in New York City. He's from India. He gave a realization that in his tradition in India, when a person dies, they're brought to the crematorium and there's a white sheet that's put over you when they burn your body. And he said there's no pockets in that white sheet. And for him that meant you can't take anything with you. Your fame, your prestige, your power to influence or exploit others, your money, your bank account, your property, your stocks, your health. You can't take anything with you. And life is so fleeting. When we look at history, it's all about people who are dead, yes? And we just, what a negative influence they had on the world or what a positive influence they had on the world. But the Bhagavad Gita tells, Neha Bikramanasosti Pratyavayo Navidyate, that on the spiritual path, or bhakti, a life of devotion to God on the spiritual platform, and a life of compassion on the spiritual platform to others, any investment is forever. If we invest in our spiritual practice or in our seva, our spiritual service, the benefits of that are eternal. They're never lost. Everything else will be lost. So it's very important, whatever our particular role in society is, that we balance our spirituality very careful with it. And I'm going to give one little more analogy, and then I'm going to end this answer. I like it a lot. It's the story of a crane. Not the cranes that build the skyscrapers, but the bird. So the nature of a crane is they stand on one leg in a stream of water. And they look down into the water. And so many little fish are swimming by. Dozens of little fish. Hundreds of little fish. Thousands of little fish. The crane just keeps looking down. And then when a big fish swims, he eats it. I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat fish. But there is a message to this story. That the crane lets all the little fish pass because he's always focused on finding the big fish. And similarly in our lives, so many little things are always going by that we become so disturbed with or so obsessed with. We chase after little fish. If you don't focus on the big fish, every little fish looks gigantic. Huh? And we spend our whole life with such superficial, insignificant, useless passing things. Why do we become so disturbed by them? Why do we become so angry, so envious, so arrogant about these little things that mean nothing? They only have meaning, and they only distract us constantly when we're not focused on something bigger. When we focus on the real purpose of life, the real meaning of life, the real spiritual essence of who we are, when we focus on that and see that as truly valuable and how we can actually be an instrument of grace in our life, that's valuable. Then all the other distractions that inevitably come in every way from both within our own minds and outside us, through others and the environment, we just let them pass because we understand they're not really very important. We're focused on something higher. As a Swami, I deal with a lot of people who are in married life, and sometimes there's such conflict between people, husband and wife, husband, and they always think it's so totally unique to us. And I listen to them, and it's just the same old stuff that everybody is doing. It's most of it's not very unique. But how do we overcome it? It's really disturbing. The relationship, we have to learn that to focus on the higher principle of why we're together, not to exploit each other, but to help each other become enlightened, to be a partnership in God's service and humanity's service. That higher principle, then all the little differences and disagreements and everything become so insignificant. The nature of the mind is it can make a pebble into a mountain. But a mind that's actually well situated in the present moment will see the pebble for what it is and actually be moving toward the real mountain. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry if I give long answers, but is there any other questions?
We were going to try and take some of the questions that were anonymous questions. We've only got time for 2 questions left. What should we do? Have their anonymous questions? Yeah, we just have a long list of questions that won't get answered, but we've tried to condense the themes and look at the main themes that you sent. So this question says, how do I forgive someone who's very close to me, who harmed me and my family, and has had a betrayal as well? Although it happened many years ago, I overcame all the material losses, but the mental scars and hate remain.
sometimes philosophy is very valuable to give us insight. But sometimes when there's really pain inflicted in the heart, philosophy just doesn't reach there. It's the human experience that we have. When we're betrayed or really hurt by someone or abused by someone, the philosophy of forgiveness really sounds nice, but it just doesn't reach that pain. That's just a reality. We have to balance and harmonize knowledge with human experience. But in such a situation, first thing is we shouldn't be guilty about our inability to forgive if we've really been hurt bad, because that only makes things worse, feeling guilt and depression over it. Forgiveness is something very positive. It's like the light in darkness. And in many situations, we really have to forgive ourselves too in order to be able to forgive others. And we can forgive ourselves for having this hatred and move forward by actually making that deeper connection. Philosophy is a path, but we have to move down that path to actually reach our destination. So if we're reading literatures and being with people who are actually bringing these higher principles into our life, and we have a spiritual practice that's actually really connecting me to these higher principles. And we pray. We pray for a higher power beyond my own. Because sometimes we're so almost imprisoned in certain mindsets that may be very justified because of what's happened to us. But still, these negative thoughts don't help us. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, teacher of one of our Chiti Shaki Devi, he gave an analogy that when you feel vengeance towards somebody, even if it's justified, it's like holding a red hot coal to throw at that person. As long as you're holding that coal, it's going to burn your own hand too. So feeling this vengeance, feeling this hatred toward another hurts us. And somehow or other, to forgive is to let go. And when we understand this principle, that it's beyond me to do that. It's beyond me to forgive in certain situations. It's beyond me to control myself in certain situations. Then we actually surrender Sharanagati to a higher power, the higher power of God's love, God's goodness, God's grace. And that higher power could miraculously transform us too. Transform that vengeance into forgiveness. Transform that hate into pity. Pity for that person. And in such a situation, we may not be able to have much of a relationship with that person again. We may or may not, depending on the situation, communicate with that person again. But if we can rise above, those own feelings within ourselves, then we experience a type of liberation where we could really move on in our life and be the change we want to be in the world. Because you can never eliminate darkness by putting more darkness in. Only light can do that. And the more we can connect to that light within ourselves, the more we can be that light.
We'll take one last question from the anonymous questions that can lead us on nicely. So, in your last session, you spoke about a daily routine of cleaning the heart. What would this look like to clean the heart and mind? What practices can you give examples?
In my life and in countless other lives, I've seen that it's making that spiritual connection. There's a beautiful verse Om apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhayabhyantara suchi. That we are very much affected and influenced by what we associate with. We were asked a question about teenagers. Well, most parents, their greatest concern for their teenage children is who they're with. Because if they're with drug addicts, they're going to probably take drugs. If they're with noble, charitable, saintly people, they're going to probably become charitable and saintly. People become very influenced by who they're with and what they're with. If you put an iron rod in fire, by its association, it's going to become red and hot like fire. If we take the same iron rod and put it with ice, it will become cold as ice. It's just a matter of time. So God is all pure. Supreme sweetness, beauty, love that's what Krishna means, the all-attractive, a name of the one God of all. God is all pure. And when we connect our consciousness with God in the proper way, if we're actually connected with God, we become purified. We don't become hateful and vengeful and violent. If we're actually connected, we'll become purified. Our minds, our hearts become purified. And one of the easiest, most accessible and powerful ways of making that connection is chanting God's names. Nam namakari bahuda nija sarva shaktis. Lord Chaitanya prayed, my dear Lord, you have many names. And in each of these names that you have revealed to humanity throughout history, you have invested with your beauty, your sweetness, and the power of your love. So in our tradition, we chant this Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The meaning of this Maha Mantra is, my dear beloved, the male and female aspect of the one supreme truth, Radha Krishna. My dear Lord, who is all attractive, divine reservoir of all compassion and love, please allow me to serve you. That's the prayer of this mantra. Please, my Lord, let me serve you. And because this mantra is transcendental sound vibrations, which are very pure, and at any time, in any situation, we could always remember or chant this beautiful mantra silently or softly. We can sit and meditate on it. We can chant on beads, or we can be in one of those red two-tier British buses. We could be in the tubes, or it could be in a traffic jam. We could be at work. In any situation, we can just connect our consciousness to the divine, to this mantra, to the sound vibration. And by doing so, we become purified. And if we regularly do like this, our minds become purified. We actually become connected with our hearts again and our souls. Thank you very much.